La Semana de la Seguridad Telefónica, presentada por Aslo Information Technologies, 19 y 20 de octubre 2021. Muchas gracias por continuar con nosotros. Ahora vamos a hablar con Hank Schless. Esta plática es en inglés, así que si ustedes quieren tener los subtítulos, por favor, actívenlos en Facebook y en YouTube para que puedan ustedes también hacer preguntas y nosotros lo traducimos acá si ustedes quieren. Let me introduce you, Hank. He's a Senior Manager of Security Solutions at Lookout. And thank you so much for being here. Which is the subject you want to introduce to us?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, and thanks everyone for attending and listening in. So today we're actually going to be talking about the risk that mobile applications can pose to your overall organization. So we're going to run through a few slides, have a few questions, and then definitely open to some question and answers at the end.
It's a very interesting subject because we all have contact with these malicious applications. We don't know how to detect it, and maybe there are some policies that the stores of these applications are trying to do, but it looks like it's never enough, right?
Right, that's true, and it's interesting. One thing that we'll talk about during this conversation is that it's not even just the malicious applications, but it's even the ones that are legitimate, that are developed by companies that have that are perfectly harmless from a personal use standpoint. But when you start to have them overlay with devices and applications that have access to corporate data, that's when they actually can get pretty risky. So it's going to be interesting I'm going to go over kind of towards the second half, the difference between what malicious means and really what risky means, because they are two separate things that can be a big difference.
Great. Okay. Do you want to make some questions to the audience?
Yeah. So I think what I'd first like to do is just run through a couple of some statistics that kind of set things up here. And everyone can see my screen, right?
Yes.
Okay, great. So there we go. So I just kind of want to help people understand why all of this is so important. And I'm not going to read through every single thing on the screen, but everyone can see here that basically mobile work is no longer a nice to have for organizations. We all know that today, right? We know that for productivity, for people to be productive from anywhere and have access to the data they need, you need to enable your workers on mobile devices. And for a lot of companies, that means allowing people to use personal devices, which is something we'll get into a little bit later in this model called Bring Your Own Device, or BYOD. So it's interesting to see these stats here, understanding that mobile work is critical to the future, even as we move out of the kind of the pandemic age here, and hopefully back to full normal pretty soon. It is interesting to see this context here. And then the other thing too is that there's this challenge that freedom of providing freedom in a way that doesn't sacrifice security. And this is where a lot of the issues come about, where using your own personal device for work is what you expect to be able to do because you want to be able to work from anywhere. But for a lot of IT and security teams, they need to figure out how to secure those devices in a way that doesn't impede on that user's privacy, but also gives the organization enough information to be able to kind of build a proper security strategy with. So I guess one question I would have to the audience, and I'm on one screen right here, so I don't know if I'll be able to see some of the answers. So maybe I don't know if we can see them or read them off. But the question I would have is, does the company that you work for allow you to use your own personal phone? Like I've got, where is it here? I've got my own iPhone, right? It's right here. It's my personal one. And, does your company let you use that phone for work? And, if so, do you have kind of like a mix of both work and personal applications on there? Or is it something where you have pretty much the same applications, but you have a work and a personal profile on both of them.
In my case, I got
Mhm.
two.
Okay.
It is always my recommendation, but yes, and I've seen your data you've been sharing, and it looks like this futuristic statistic about the working remotely. I really hope that this is true, because we've seen, at least in the US, that a
Mhm.
lot of people quit their jobs because of these conditions of that. Some enterprises wanted to return to the office. How do you see this? That a lot of people is quitting because they don't feel secure about this.
Well, I think that's an interesting question, and I think it speaks to kind of honestly, the greater cultural shift that's happened around the idea of being able to work from anywhere. I mean, I think that there is obviously value in being able to go into an office. I'm in my office right now, our office, my company's office, and I like coming here. It's my own choice. I live a 10-minute walk away, so it's easy for me. But for a lot of people who have young families, or are caring for loved ones, or just they normally commute 2 hours a day. The idea of coming into the office is not very appetizing, and so I think that this stat in particular, because you're right, that's a pretty big number. 97% of the people
Yes.
surveyed here consider remote workers to be more risky, be at more risk than office workers. But I do think it's true, because there's this idea that when you're in the office, you at least have some
Control.
pretty high level control, exactly, because of the network you're on and all of that. But the thing that my chief strategy officer loves to say this. He says we went from 50 offices to 5,000 offices, or in our case, 12 offices to 600 offices, because everybody now has their own office. So you run the risk there of not just the employee themselves creating more risk, but for the other people on their network, family members, children, whoever it may be, downloading malware that affects that network.
Absolutely. Okay.
Yeah. So the next one, this is a graphic that we use a lot to kind of illustrate what mobile risk really looks like. And I know it's kind of a lot of words, but today we're really focusing on what's in the green box there, which is apps. At a really high level, basically the way that we look at this is that there are four main vectors of mobile risk. So you have malicious and risky applications. You have devices that can be compromised with things like, we've all heard of Pegasus surveillanceware at this point. It's been in the news a lot recently. You have network threats, where the attacker is actually able to get you on a compromised network and funnel your traffic through maybe their own router or something like that. And then you have web and content. What this really is phishing risk, and mobile phishing is something we could have a whole nother webinar on. So we'll talk about a little bit here, but that's a whole other issue. And then you basically sort of cross-reference that with there being actual malicious threats on the top here, vulnerabilities within the software itself that enable each of these types of attacks, and then the behavior and configurations that actually, because of the way the device is configured or the way that people behave on them, they pose risks. So we're focusing on apps today. So we're going to be looking at application threats, which we mentioned earlier, is the actual malicious applications, and things like when we discover an app. We just actually, even just a couple months ago, we discovered about I think it was a couple hundred applications that were running on the Google Play Store that had the same malware family, or really what it was doing is these apps were saying that they would provide cryptocurrency mining services, and you had to pay for them. And in reality, they weren't delivering anything. They were just taking your money and taking it as crypto, which can be very valuable. We also see it a lot where apps like that are laced with things like banking Trojans, where they wait for you to log into your personal banking application in the background, and then can record your keystrokes and steal your login information. The other thing here with vulnerabilities is that it's inevitable that any software is shipped with a vulnerability in it. I think that everyone would agree that perfect code is impossible. So the issue here is that a lot of times people will discover these vulnerabilities and then exploit them by, because usually it's something that can be exploited through code. So they will send that user a malicious link that then remotely executes code, takes advantage of that application vulnerability, and then does something like, again, using the banking example, steals your banking information, steals the data you have on your phone, but more importantly, to your organization, steals some of the data that you maybe have stored on there that you downloaded from, your corporate Google Drive profile or something like that, and save the document on your phone. And the last one, this is the particularly interesting one to me, is the app behaviors and configurations, because this is really where you start to find that definition, that line between malicious and risky that I was talking about before. And we'll dive into that a little bit more. But are any of these that stand out in particular, or you've heard about more than others, or have any questions about? Nope. Okay.
No.
Okay. All right.
Sorry.
Just want to make sure. No worries. So these are some interesting statistics. I think that devices, we trust them. We have these within arm's reach all the time. We trust them with our most sensitive information and with our most valuable information, and we would never assume that our phone would or our tablet would act in a way that would be against our best interests. But the fact is that they're just pieces of hardware with software running on them, and they don't know the difference. So that's something that attackers take advantage of, and that trust can really work against us. In particular, I think most relevant to our conversation today is this 1 in 25 stat here, which is that 1 in 25 mobile applications were found to leak credentials, which is pretty bad. I mean, that's it's almost always unintentional, but knowing that's the case, I mean, we each probably have a couple hundred apps on our device. So by this number, there could be 8 applications on there that are exposing my credentials to another service that we may not know about. All right, so this is kind of where it gets interesting, in my opinion. So what do these risks actually look like? So this is a fun little graphic that one of my teammates put together. So on the top here, you have the way it used to be. So you have the bad guy here on the left, and you have corporate email. They would send something to, in a corporate email, whether it was a virus or a phishing link, I'm a Nigerian prince, send me all your money. And it would have to get through all of these things, right? That's get through the firewall, the secure email gateway, the endpoint antivirus, then get to the computer. Then the person would actually have to open it, download it, and all of that, right? So it was a pretty long process. Nowadays, what's happened is that the attacker goes and targets the user on their mobile device, and they have all of these applications. And the thing about all these applications is that every single one of them has some sort of messaging feature. And within that messaging feature, an attacker can deliver anything, and they can execute what's called social engineering, where they pose as somebody else and convince the user that they have a legitimate reason to go to this website or to download this application. And a lot of times that's how the user ends up getting compromised, and the attacker actually has the ability to steal data, or even worse, find a way to get into that company's infrastructure through the corporate applications that are on their device. A lot of times go ahead.
We are watching, Hank, some applications like Kik, like Telegram, for example. I mean, that probably had a very encrypted communication. It doesn't matter if your phone is already with malware and you've got this intervention from another user. It doesn't matter if you have a very high security with the application, because once they are in, doesn't matter, all the information are available to them.
Right, and that's a really good point, and that's something that a lot of people actually don't really realize, is that just because it's great, like with WhatsApp, with Telegram, whatever it is, it's great that the application secures those messages, end to end. But to your point, the fact is if the device itself is compromised, and let's say the attacker is actually just watching your phone, whatever's on the screen is going to be available to him. So it doesn't matter whether that message is compromised or not, encrypted or not, it's going to be compromised. And that's a big part of where Lookout helps, is helping people understand if their device has been compromised or if there's someone else watching, and they should probably, and we help them figure out how to remediate those issues. But it's amazing how much access to data these devices have, especially if it's a personal one that is also used for work.
Yes.
So just a couple examples of phishing links we saw out of France earlier this year. This is basically asking people for their name, their credit card number, the expiration date, and the 3-letter code on it. But it's posing as, you look at the top here, and that's basically the tax agency for the French government, and it's asking about your personal or your professional taxes. So it's, they can steal a lot of information. And honestly, if you just kind of glanced at this, I think it looks pretty legit. Honestly,
Yeah,
they're pretty good. Yeah, and we see these a lot. I mean, right? You see them with fake Google Drive logins, or they say, they send you a message and say, to access this file, you need to log into your company Google Drive account, and it's on a web page like this. And they're pretty crafty, they're pretty good. So in doing that, you end up giving up your corporate login credentials, and then the attacker goes and logs in, even just from their computer. They start with Google Drive, and then they
Facebook or LinkedIn.
Yeah.
By the time you are applying to the work, they say upload your resume from Google Drive or Dropbox, and then they get access to everything that it's inside.
Right. And what's even scarier, honestly, is it's not just those applications. They could go to, Amazon Web Services or Google Cloud Platform and try your login there. Because if you're an engineer at that company, odds are you probably have access to those applications. And then suddenly they have access to your entire infrastructure, and they're able to encrypt files and execute a ransomware attack. I mean, that's how that happens a lot of times.
Yes.
All right. So this is just to exemplify a little bit here where all of the risks can happen. Because a big thing here is that with mobile, and especially as I've mentioned with the bring your own device model, there are so many different types of applications where mobile phishing can happen within it, or where the user, like I mentioned before, can be targeted by attacks where they're convinced to download something or access a website that ends up compromising the entire device. So, the email use case, even though it is a little bit dated, is always going to be true. We all have email apps on our phone. SMS and iMessage, we all get messages all the time saying, someone uploaded a photo of you to this link, click it here. And
happened a lot during this year. We Mexicans suffer this fraud about is this you, this picture, and every time it comes, a lot of people falls into that fraud.
Yeah, they do, and that's actually if it's the same. So that's actually popped up in Europe recently as well. It's this malware called FluBot, like the sickness, and it's actually a banking Trojan. And so what they do is that they send you that link, and they ask you to then download an application to view the photos, and that application is laced with FluBot, which is a banking Trojan malware. There was a big issue with it about 6 or 8 months ago, where those messages were saying, you have a package from FedEx or DHL or UPS, to track its final delivery, click here, and it did the exact same thing. So it shows you how these campaigns are repeatable, and people are able to figure out ways to get victims to keep falling for their tricks.
And now that you are mentioning the SMS and iMessage, they are trying to confuse us, because it seems like it's a two-factor authentication, but it is not. Or those numbers, if you put it in the wrong window or in the wrong form, you are giving them access. So it's very important not to be disguised by these methods.
Right, exactly. And it's so easy to just kind of glance over it because we're so used to moving at 100 miles an hour on our phone. It's so worth it to just, whenever you get something like that, if you think there's something wrong, like if in your head or in your gut you say, man, this just doesn't seem quite right, odds are it's probably not, because we all have pretty good intuition about these things at this point. The other thing is, if you're about to enter your even your personal login credentials on something that brings you to a website, check what the URL is on top and check the full thing, because people will hide the malicious part of it, kind of the part of a URL that gives away that's not real, sort of towards the end. And they do this because our phones truncate the URL a bit, and we only see really what the domain name is. So look at that. Look and see if there are any other like small typos or giveaways that's like, this doesn't look quite right. So it's worth taking those extra couple of seconds just to be able to understand what, if you may be in danger. Another one is, this is obviously supposed to be a WhatsApp logo, but there are plenty of other third-party messaging apps, as we saw on the previous slide. This is a place where it's actually been in the news a bunch in the last couple of years, where, like, for example, there was a vulnerability in WhatsApp where the user could be targeted with the Pegasus surveillanceware simply by the attacker just calling their WhatsApp number. The user didn't have to pick up.
They didn't even have to touch it, the phone. Yes.
Nope. It's called a zero-click malware delivery method, and that's the fun stuff. But that's realistic, and for journalists, that was a big concern.
I know. Yes.
Yeah, no, I'm sure it's probably a good thing you have two phones, because it probably helps out a little bit. But yeah, so that's that's again an issue where things can get pretty sticky pretty quickly, and someone could get access to your personal or work data, by exploiting that vulnerability. We're going to skip the personal email one because that all falls in the same bucket. The other thing is that, a lot of times, especially on Android, people will download third-party applications off of stores that aren't, the Google Play Store or the iOS App Store, and that's a process called side loading. And that's risky because those applications haven't been put through the same security measures and reviews as apps that are in those stores. Now, I know I mentioned that before. There are applications found in the Google Play Store pretty frequently that have malware in them. So obviously things aren't perfect, but it's still, that sideload application could have something embedded in it where it's watching your phone. It's waiting for you to, waiting for that signal that you're logging into something, and then watches your keystrokes and steals your login credentials there.
This is why some iOS features of the iOS 14 and 15 is changing so much in terms of data privacy. So we know which level of data they have from us and why they want it. I mean, it's started to change this perspective, because we really need to know. Probably when we downloaded an application, like, I don't know, 5 years ago, we just gave them all the access to our conversations, audio,
Right.
GPS position. And now we really need to be aware of which information every application have from us.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a big part of it for sure. And it's really helped. It's helped in a lot of ways, and it's caused a lot of companies to really tighten up their data practices. It's a little bit, in my opinion, I thought that having something like GDPR would be enough to get people to be more transparent about how they're handling their data. But, I think, what it really comes down to is, if you make something that says, hey, all the money you make off ads is going to be for nothing if you don't kind of disclose what you're doing with people's data, then that's when people really start to pay attention. So, but you're absolutely right. It's been a good thing for transparency and privacy reasons for sure. Now, the last three things here, obviously, you don't want people accessing, adult, violent, or criminal content on your work devices. There was actually a malware campaign that Lookout discovered last year called Goontact. And what it was that it was targeting individuals where the attacker was posing as basically an online sex worker and said, hey, I'm going to, we should go talk on this platform. Got them to I think it was either visit a malicious website that looked legitimate or download an application. And then what they did was that in the process of this fake conversation, the attacker would steal all of the contacts off of the victim's phone and then record their conversation with this supposed sex worker and then turn it around and blackmail them and say, hey, I'm going to send this to everybody in your contact list if you don't give me access to information or give me money or whatever it may be. And so it turned into actually a pretty horrifying exploitation campaign.
What's the name realistic. Of the Gontac? What's
the goon attack? So like a goon, like a brute, and then tact, TACT. I assume because it's kind of like contact, but so GOONTACT,
okay,
and it's if you Google it, it'll come up on across some news stuff on our website. But it's an interesting one. It's an unfortunate one, but that is how these people operate. So don't want to have that happening. All right, so this is actually sort of what you were talking about before, right? With a legitimate application, and this is a little bit of an older version of Evernote, but it really exemplifies what we've been talking about here. So Evernote is a perfectly legitimate application, right? I mean, I use it. I don't know if you use it.
Yes, I like it.
Yeah, it's great, right? Yeah, exactly. The new version is great. This was from just a couple of releases ago. So this is pretty recent. So the interesting thing here is that, and this is all pulled from our Lookout administrative console that our customers have access to, so they can go in and whether it's an app that's in their fleet or if they just want to see, let's say they're sitting there and they're saying, okay, well, do I want to allow my employees to use Evernote on their work phones? They can actually drop the iOS App Store link for Evernote into the Lookout platform, and then we'll perform this kind of dissection of the whole thing. So this is interesting, right? Because from a personal perspective, maybe maybe I'm okay with some of this, right? Like access to the clipboard. When am I ever really copy and pasting on my personal phone? That's scandalous. The contacts thing, okay, it's a little much. Maybe you don't want to monitor your location changes, but to your point earlier, the people are doing a better job of making that more transparent. And some of this is okay. It's fine from a personal perspective. Maybe we deal with it because we're okay with it. But from a corporate perspective, for something like compliance with GDPR or CCPA or even broader, or sorry, more specific data privacy laws and compliance standards like HIPAA, you don't want the possibility of an application getting access to something like, let's say, for example, patient contact data, because that falls under HIPAA. And on top of that, at this time, there were servers, the app was found to be in contact with servers in China. So, I'm not using this as a reason to scare anybody. I'm just saying, this is a perfect example of how something is, it's not malicious. Like Evernote is not trying to do anything bad to you. But from a corporate perspective, if you're running your business, you might say, you know what, this is a little bit more risk than I'm willing to take on. So I'm not going to allow people to use this application on their mobile devices as long as those devices have access to corporate data.
We need to make this analysis of which permission every application we have, and even when we are working. But it is pretty attractive how probably Evernote, which is a note, I don't know, like it's something for ideas. Yes, it's a notebook. Yeah. But how they convince us to open the camera, because you can take a picture of your notes and then bring it to the application, and then it writes down what you put in paper, for example. It is pretty convincing that you have to access this, but of course the medical information or how they are sharing the information is something that the people who are contracting or using this application at first, they don't have idea of this.
Right, right. And then on top of that, kind of my point earlier about if there's a vulnerability in the application that's found, let's say someone says, "Oh, this version of Evernote has a vulnerability in it that allows anyone who exploits it access to anything the app has access to." And this is actually a big issue. Last year, there was a vulnerable version of Google Chrome that and every Android device has Google Chrome on it. So there was this vulnerability found where that was the case. It gave the attacker, if they were able to exploit the vulnerability, access to everything that Chrome had access to on the device, which is pretty far reaching. So in the case of the camera, like you said, okay, maybe from a personal perspective, okay, I snap a picture of some notes, it transcribes it, we're good to go. But if you're an attacker and you say, okay, well, I'm going to get access to that camera, and also, by the way, the audio it records, and I'm going to hear all the conversations this person is having, that's when it becomes an issue, right? Now, if this had happened with this particular version of Evernote, I'm sure we would have heard about it, but just exemplary of the risk at place. All right, so I think that's most of everything that I have here. I just want to go over some key takeaways that I hope will be helpful to people as they move forward with all of this. As I just went through, even legitimate applications can pose risk to your overall security posture. And as we discussed, you want to be able to understand exactly what apps have access to what data, right? Because if you have to be aligned with something like HIPAA, and you need to be sure that your employees use their devices for both personal and work, and they have patient contact information in their devices. These compliance standards are really expanding to start to include mobile in their parameters. They are specifically calling it out, saying you need to make sure that you have mobile devices covered as part of your compliance standing. And that can be that if you're not sure where, if an application is touching that particular data point, that could put you in violation at risk of fines and all other sorts of stuff. So that's a big one.
Hank,
Yeah.
there is this trend of, at least for Mexican enterprises, that they say, okay, I'm going to give you an extra phone for the work communication. But this phone is very, very basic. They didn't have like a, they have another operating system different from Android or Apple. And it's even easier to hack. I mean, that could not be a security policy, because it's easier to have access even for the communication of the of work where you're working. So we really need to be conscious about that. We need to give them special, or at least solid devices to our workers, so we can have a very good security strategy.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's great if you build a big castle, but if you put it on if you build it on the marshland, it's going to be gone in no time. So, yep. So legitimate applications can pose risk. Remote work obviously will continue to be an issue. There are threat vectors like mobile phishing that will exploit these vulnerabilities within other apps and steal your data. Bring your own device. Allowing people to use personal devices is the way that you need to enable your employees to be productive these days, but it also introduces additional risk to the organization. So, you really want to make sure that you're securing mobile, and it's just as important to do that as any other part of your infrastructure that has access to that corporate data.
Yes, and probably it could be like very obvious, but some of people who has kids, they lend the phone to their kids, and they are watching, they are playing, and they don't even know what they are downloading to the phone or what they got access. And it is pretty important also to understand it, because in the gaming part, I mean, it's full of things that share this with a number, so we can give you a prize or some coins or an extra outfit for it's full of that.
Yeah, no, you're right. That's a very big risk. And just because little Jimmy never gets in trouble at school doesn't mean that he's not gonna download something that shares your data, right?
Yes. Can we go back to the diagram you shared, like three Yeah, 3 slides before the
This
other
one?
one, the big one. No, the one before. Yeah, the one before, so we can like analyze it. No, the white one. No,
Oh, sorry,
the,
the big
the big
graph.
one. Yes.
There it is.
Yes,
Yeah.
I just wanted to understand that, or explain to the people that it is a very big game, big field of gaming during this. I mean, the possibilities or the risk are enormous. I mean, we probably don't know about adware and how is affecting the productivity of the people, and most of them probably, when we started this pandemic situation, a lot of people downloaded some plugins or applications so they can hear more the volume, the volume applications or plugins for Chrome or applications for phone. They turn to be malware also. So
Mm-hmm.
probably it's not, they are trying to give you an extra function of your phone, but it's actually malware. So please check out what this is all about threats, about content, because probably we are trying to do something for good, but in the end
Mm-hmm.
it's not good and probably will affect us.
Yeah, exactly, and that's so spot on. It's encouraging to hear that you're so aware of this because we need more people like you who understand this and can
Thank you.
share it with more people. So I think that's all the slides that I had.
Mhm.
I think that I am going to I can stop sharing my window
Yes.
here. All right, cool. Um, so do we have any questions from anyone
Yes, we
or
have one from Elias Salas. He
mhm.
says, "What is the recommendation that you advise for companies with bring your own device strength for securing its information?"
So the thing to do here is to make sure that you can use a security solution that doesn't invade privacy because there's sort of a fine line you have to play there, right? And actually, you know what? I'm gonna just go off camera for a second because I have to go pick up a computer charger, and I don't want to
Yes.
make everyone dizzy, but I will definitely continue talking
Okay.
here. So that's a great question, and the
Vamos a tener a Hank de regreso en un momento. Por favor, si tienen más preguntas de una vez, aprovechenlo. Y aquí lo esperamos en un momentito. Vamos a ver un spot y en un momentito regresamos.
All right, can you hear me again?
Okay. Yes. Are you back?
Okay, great.
Okay.
I am back. Yes, thank you. Yes, to answer. Sorry, my computer battery has
Don't
gotten
worry.
really bad in the last few weeks. So yes, so the thing to do is to make sure that whatever security you have on the device, not only does it respect the user's privacy, but also it does so in a way and provides security in a way where the user doesn't feel like they're being watched, because you can go out and buy all of the security software you want. But if the person feels like it's something that's invading their privacy, they're not going to deploy it in the first place. So you really want to make sure that people feel they understand the value and the benefit of deploying something like this, and they're not sitting there saying, "Well, I'm basically being tracked now. Why would I want to do this?" So if you are talking to vendors about doing that, really, really, really drill in on that privacy part and figure out how they, how their successful customers, are able to convey that message to their users.
Okay. Great. So, how can we? I mean, probably it's not something that the eye can see if there is malware on an application, but is there
Mm-hmm.
any way that we can be aware, or I mean, we are seeing that it's private messaging, we are seeing that
Mm-hmm.
it's gaming. So how can we be protected in that way? How can we be protected even if we don't see the threat?
Mm-hmm. Well, that's where you really do need to have a security solution on the device. Lookout is able to provide that type of security, and the way that we do it is because we have the largest mobile intelligence data set in the world. So what we do is that we protect over 200 million mobile devices. We've ingested and broken down over 150 million mobile apps, both legitimate and malicious ones. And we also ingest over 4.5 million web items, which means URLs, domains, certificates, all these things that basically are used as validation. So that, and what we're able to do is process all the telemetry that comes from that and automatically convict an application as malicious if it's found as it's being built. Same thing with phishing links. So, I'm not,
It works
and
like an antivirus, where it's like a database that it's continuously upgraded. So you have like the latest news about every application,
Mhm.
and then you detect it, or you're put it an a warning sign, or just to delete it. How it works?
Yeah, exactly. So since we're able to do all of this automatically, it's actually pretty cool. I've kind of seen how it works. I've seen the sort of the innards of it. And since we're able to basically identify something malicious and then push out the what we call coverage for it, so basically protect our users from it, without requiring the users to do anything, that's where there's really that value. Because if it's found on the device, or someone goes and tries to download it, or to the point earlier about the third party applications, right? If someone goes and downloads it, look out, we'll scan it, and odds are we've already seen it, so we'll be able to say, before it's actually downloaded and installed on the device and anything malicious can be executed, we'll alert you and let you know, as soon as that's on there.
I've heard some cases where the developers are victims of a robbery, and they lost their accesses to for the iOS
Mhm.
store or the Android store, and then the ones that they got the access start to put malware on the application.
Mhm.
How do you get notice about this? And probably, as I don't know, I don't want to tell a company, but probably it's a well-known company that have been doing a lot of good work, but with the
Mhm.
situations, all the good work is gone.
Yeah, that can happen a fair amount. And the other thing too is if there are actually people who will go out and find, they're bad guys who will go and say, I'm going to find a really popular flashlight application on the Android
Mhm.
store, right? And I'm going to go and I'm going to offer the developer of that application $100,000 for all the rights to that, all the certifications, all the developer stuff, everything, basically to hand over the whole thing to me, right? Because that application, if it's, let's say, the number 7 most popular flashlight application on the Android store, whatever it may be, as
Yes.
silly as it sounds, people download those and use them. And the attacker can then slowly work in malware. But since that application, that developer has already been legitimized in the past, then if you
It's
don't have
pretty difficult to have
it,
this
yeah.
certification. It takes, probably for the iOS users, it takes like months, even years.
Yeah, exactly. But that's where the advantage of that telemetry comes in, because we can recognize that as it's happening and stop it in its tracks.
Yes, and I don't know. A lot of people think that they are being observed all the time, that they are working on them. What would you say to them with this? That now that you are seeing malware working so closely, must we be precautious about what we download, what kind of information, what they can do with that access to our phone?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, it's like I was saying earlier, we trust our phones, right? We trust our tablets, we trust all of our devices um, to act in our best interests. And at the same time, we all know that people try to attack us through our computers, right? This is something we've been trained on since computers came out. Don't click that, don't go there, don't do all that. But with a phone, it's this kind of this freewheeling, do whatever you want kind of mentality. And I think that what people need to realize is that that can't be the case. Exercising that extra level of caution has so much value, um, that you really just want to make sure that, again, like I said earlier, like if something feels a little off, odds are it is. It's so much harder to spot these things visually on a phone. that you really just want to make sure that, you know, if you feel like something's off, if you feel like someone's suddenly you're getting a lot more information about yourself that you didn't even know, that's obviously a flag. I say that halfway jokingly, but it is a little strange sometimes how we get these things that pop up on our screen and we're like, wait, I was just thinking about that. But if you're being, always being careful about where you're sharing your data is just it's so important these days. And making sure that if someone asks for some sort of important personal information and it doesn't feel totally right, or you kind of sit there and you say, I thought they already had this. What you do is you just cut that communication, then you call the organization and say, hey, or reach out to them, however, their support line, whatever it may be, and say, hey, is it, do you guys ask me for this information? And I bet you most of the time they'll say no.
But well, if it's that clear that they ask me the information, probably I will feel, secure. But in the stores, everything is put it like a subscription mode or paying these applications. So I've been thinking with this diagram you put where there is this application that say, oh, go get the password of your neighbor's Wi-Fi and just pay me like $2. And a lot of people pay it because they want this information or trying to be
right.
a hacker for one day. But that is probably, I don't see like the danger because I am paying through the Google store or Apple store and I don't see any harm. Must we be aware or away from that applications too?
Yes, absolutely. It's not worth it. It's not worth it's nothing is more valuable than your information. So stuff like that just absolutely is not worth it.
And there is no even way to get back that money. I've tried to contact the developer or try to put a complaint, and nothing works. It's
Right.
just a waste of time and money. And
Yep.
Hank, do you recommend us deleting applications we are not using? Accesses for that we gave to Facebook before. Which other tips can you give us to get rid of that useless applications, but they stayed a lot of years in our devices?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say it's definitely a good practice to once every couple of months maybe just take a look and say, okay, which of these applications do I not use anymore? I know that I've got a couple on my phone that that put cool frames around photographs, and I used it once for something for my nephew and I never used it again. And
Yes.
not to say that particular application is malicious, but it's the perfect example, right? You never know. And the other thing that you mentioned there, Elena, which is a really good point, is when it comes to things like, Facebook is obviously an easy example, but there are all these services that are all interconnected with each other. And a really good thing to do is from time to time, just go and check which services still have access to that particular platform. So, Facebook is the perfect example because you can use it to log into all sorts of stuff. Same thing with your Gmail and all this stuff. But you can also, there are ways to go in and say, I want to see what other applications this platform is integrated with, because those applications still have access to all that data. And again, if it's something that you haven't used in years, you don't want people to have that access. So that's a good kind of security hygiene practice to use.
Now that you've mentioned these frame applications, I know friends who have a lot of applications to make stories, but they ask me every time to register, to make an account with them, to start using them. So probably when we deleted these applications, it's not enough. We really need to get out of that application to ask them to delete our information, right?
Yeah, and that's a big part of GDPR is the right to be forgotten is what they call it. They say, if I reach out to a company and I say, hey, I want you to get rid of everything you have on me, they
But this
have to do it.
application doesn't have that button or that option. It's impossible.
Oh, absolutely. They make it a lot of places make it as difficult as possible, but they still, but it's somewhere in there.
Must be.
But they just make it as difficult as possible to do.
Okay, so where they can reach you if they want to contact you, they want to have more information about Lookout.
Well, so I can you can always reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm very active there. I'm sort of active on Twitter, but we also Lookout has great partnerships, with others all throughout Central and South America. We have fantastic partners who we work with, and so please reach out to them. They are we have great relationships with them. They can lead you in the right direction. And yeah, look, any questions you have, I'm always happy to answer as well. If this is something you're interested in for your company, I can put you in touch with the right people as well. But we have a fantastic network of partners all throughout the regions that can help you out as well.
That's amazing. And I hope that a lot of schools and a lot of parents have contact with this, because it is a great, great risk to put all this information of our families in the phone. Elias Sala says, thank you so much, Hank. Great information.
You got this. Yep.
And
you got it.
I'll invite all our listeners en Spanish. Les voy a invitar a la última charla que vamos a tener con Marla González sobre detox digital. Hank, we're going to talk about digital detox. So probably you need to be there too. Probably me.
That's an interesting one. Yeah, that's a good one.
In United States, there is this like spas where they have a digital detox, like a 5-day meditation mode all the time. So I probably need one of those, because it's affecting our children, it's affecting our families, and with pandemic changed everything. So thank you so much, Hank, for this information, and please stay tuned what we are doing. And thank you so much to Aslo for bringing this opportunity.
Yep, thank you, Elena. It's great to meet you.
Thank you.
All right, see ya.
Ok, están realizando una compra con cargo a su tarjeta débito. Usted está realizando esta compra, señor.
Cuando recibes una llamada y dicen que son de tu banco, pero te piden algún dato como tu contraseña o NIP, ojo, puede tratarse de un delincuente. Más de 1.900.000 fraudes se realizaron tan solo en el primer trimestre del 2021. 13.560 casos de robo de identidad en ese mismo periodo. De 4.6 millones de extorsiones denunciadas, 88.9% de ellas fueron a través de extorsiones telefónicas. No te pierdas la Semana de la Seguridad Telefónica presentada por Aslo Information Technologies, 19 y 20 de octubre. Acceso libre a las pláticas con expertos y expertas en los sectores legal, tecnológico, de negocios y humano. Dale like y conéctate a cada charla en facebook.com/AsloInfotech. Te esperamos.